The first Marvel comic book. It's Marvel Comics Issue 1, released in 1939 by Timely Comics, which later became Marvel. This was during the golden age of comics, when superheroes were just starting to explode in popularity after Superman's success. The issue wasn't part of a big universe yet, it was more like a collection of different stories, but it laid the foundation for everything Marvel would become decades later. Inside this issue, readers were introduced to some of Marvel's earliest icons. The most important ones were the original Human Torch, an android, not the Fantastic Four version, and Namor the Submariner. Namor was especially interesting because he wasn't your typical hero. He was actually the first anti-hero in comics. He could be aggressive, arrogant, and even attack humans when he felt they deserved it. That mix of hero and villain energy is something Marvel would later become famous for. What made this comic stand out was its tone. Compared to other comics at the time, the stories had more tension and unpredictability. Namor, for example, wasn't trying to save the world, but he was often fighting it. This early approach introduced the idea that characters could be flawed, emotional, and morally complicated. It's a small thing now, but back then it was a big shift from the clean-cut heroes people were used to. Even though Marvel Comics 1 doesn't look like modern Marvel stories, it's the starting point of the entire universe. It introduced the idea that heroes don't have to be perfect, and that stories can explore conflict in deeper ways. Without it, you probably don't get Spider-Man, the X-Men, or the Avengers as we know them. It's basically the first step in building one of the biggest fictional universes ever. The first major event. Released in 1984, Secret Wars was the first time Marvel pulled characters from across multiple comics into one central story that actually mattered. Written by Jim Shooter, the event ran through its own series while also impacting other titles, making it feel like one big connected moment in the Marvel universe. The story kicks off when a godlike being called the Beyonder kidnaps Earth's greatest heroes and villains and drops them onto a planet called Battleworld. His goal is to watch them fight and see who wins. Characters like Spider-Man, the Avengers, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four are all thrown together, while villains like Doctor Doom and Ultron are placed on the opposite side. It's basically Marvel's first everyone is here moment. It's a cool concept, and it had some real lasting consequences. The biggest one is Spider-Man getting the black suit, which later leads to Venom. But beyond that, it proved that Marvel could tell one massive story across its universe and have readers actually follow it. This became the blueprint for future events like Infinity Gauntlet and Civil War. Before this, crossovers were fun. After this, they became essential. Secret Wars basically invented the modern comic book event. It showed that you could bring together dozens of characters, raise the stakes to a global or cosmic level, and still keep fans invested. What started as a bold experiment even tied to selling toys ended up reshaping how superhero stories are told forever. Every big Marvel event you know today traces back to this idea. The first crossover. Before giant events like Secret Wars, Marvel's first real crossover story was Submariner's quest for Krang. It wasn't massive by today's standards, but at the time it was a big deal. The story moved across multiple comics, like Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense, and Avengers, making readers follow the narrative from one title to another. This was one of the first times Marvel experimented with the idea of a connected storyline across different books, instead of keeping everything self-contained. At the center of the story is Namor the Submariner, returning to Atlantis only to find his throne taken by the warlord Krang. Krang represents political tension within Atlantis, making the conflict feel more personal and layered. The story also dives into Namor's complicated relationship with Lady Dorma, adding emotional stakes on top of the power struggle. The main objective of the story revolves around finding Neptune's trident, a powerful artifact that would secure Namor's rightful rule over Atlantis. This turns into a full journey, with Namor facing obstacles both on land and underwater. This quest structure is what gives the crossover its momentum, pushing the story forward across different comic titles while keeping everything connected. Even though Quest for Krang feels small compared to modern events, it introduced the idea that stories don't have to stay in one comic. Marvel proved they could start a plot in one series and continue it in another, encouraging readers to explore more of their universe. That concept eventually evolved into full-scale crossover events. In a way, this was Marvel testing the waters, and it worked. The first major war. The first true, large-scale war in Marvel Comics is the Kree-Skrull War. It is a massive storyline that ran through the Avengers. This was a full intergalactic conflict spiraling onto Earth. For the first time, Marvel told a story where the stakes weren't personal or local, but cosmic, involving entire alien civilizations and putting humanity right in the middle of it. At the center of the conflict are the alien races known as the Kree and the Skrulls. The Kree are a militaristic empire focused on order and control, while the Skrulls are shape-shifting infiltrators who rely on deception. This war had been going on for ages, but Earth suddenly becomes a key battleground, dragging the Avengers into something far bigger than anything they had faced before. The Avengers are forced to deal with both sides of the war, not even fully understanding who they can trust. The Skrulls' ability to disguise themselves creates paranoia, while the Kree manipulate events behind the scenes. Characters like Vision, Scarlet Witch, and Captain Marvel play crucial roles, and the story constantly shifts between action, mystery, and political tension. The Kree-Skrull War was the first time Marvel fully embraced cosmic storytelling on a massive scale. It introduced long-term consequences, complex alien politics, and the idea that Earth is just a small piece of a much bigger universe. Every major cosmic storyline that came after, from Infinity Gauntlet to Secret Invasion, owes something to this war. It proved that Marvel's stories should go beyond superheroes and into full-blown galactic conflict. The first permanent death. The first truly impactful death in Marvel Comics is the death of Gwen Stacy, which happens in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 121. Before this, characters rarely die in a meaningful or permanent way. Comics were lighter, safer, and usually avoided consequences that couldn't be undone. But this moment completely changed that. It showed readers that no one was safe, not even the person closest to the hero. During a confrontation with the Green Goblin, Gwen is thrown off a bridge, famously depicted as the Brooklyn Bridge. Spider-Man tries to save her by shooting a web to catch her mid-fall. He succeeds, but when he pulls her back up, she's already dead. The exact cause is left ambiguous, whether it was the fall or the sudden stop, but that small detail makes the moment even more haunting. Gwen was Peter's girlfriend, and one of the most important people in his life. Her death wasn't heroic, and it wasn't reversed. It was sudden, brutal, and deeply personal. For the first time, Spider-Man couldn't save someone, and that failure became a permanent part of his story. It added a level of emotional weight that Marvel Comics hadn't really explored before. Gwen Stacy's death marked the end of the innocent era of comics, and the beginning of a darker, more realistic storytelling. After this, major deaths became more common, and writers weren't afraid to take bigger risks with characters. It set the tone for everything that came after. The first team. It's the Fantastic Four, debuting in Fantastic Four issue 1. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, this team launched the entire modern Marvel universe. Before them, heroes mostly worked alone or in simple groups, but the Fantastic Four made teamwork feel real and central to the story. The team forms when 4 individuals, Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and Ben Grimm, are exposed to cosmic radiation during a space mission. Instead of becoming perfect heroes, they gain powers that reflect who they are. Reed becomes elastic and hyper-intelligent. Sue turns invisible, Johnny controls fire, and Ben transforms into the monstrous thing. Right from the start, their powers feel like both gifts and burdens, which adds depth to their dynamic. They argued, joked, got frustrated, and genuinely cared about each other. Reed and Sue had a romantic relationship. Johnny was the reckless younger brother, and Ben struggled with his transformation. It's basically Marvel's first family, and that emotional connection made readers more invested and helped define how future Marvel teams would be written. The Fantastic Four set the tone for everything that followed. They introduced the idea that heroes can be flawed, relationships matter, and the world reacts to them. They were the blueprint. The first live-action adaptation. It's Spidey Super Stories, which aired as part of the kids' show, The Electric Company, starting in 1974. This version of Spider-Man wasn't part of a big cinematic universe or even a full TV series. It appeared in short segments, designed to entertain and teach kids at the same time. Still, it marked the very first time a Marvel superhero was brought to life in live action. This version of Spider-Man was pretty unique. He didn't speak at all. Instead, he communicated through thought bubbles and simple actions, almost like a silent film character. The tone was light, fun, and educational, with Spider-Man stopping small-time criminals rather than dealing with dark or complex storylines. It's a far cry from what we are used to today, but it worked perfectly for its audience. The production was also simple, basic costumes, particle stunts, and no special effects like we see now. But despite the limitation, it captured the core idea of Spider-Man. For many kids in the 1970s, this was their first time seeing a Marvel hero outside of comics, making it a huge step in bringing these characters to a wider audience. Even though Spidey Super Stories feels small compared to modern Marvel movies, it opened the door for everything that came after. The first billion-dollar movie. The first Marvel movie to cross the $1 billion mark at the box office is The Avengers. Released in 2012, this film was the payoff to years of build-up from earlier films like Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. For the first time, multiple major heroes came together on the big screen in one connected story, something that had never been done at this scale before. Directed by Joss Whedon, the movie brings together Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye to face a global threat. Watching these characters interact, argue, clash, and eventually work as a team was a huge part of the appeal. It felt like a live-action version of a comic crossover, and fans showed up in massive numbers because of it. What made the Avengers special is that it felt like an event. The story centered around an alien invasion led by Loki, delivered massive action, humor, and character moments all at once. It proved that audiences were willing to follow a shared universe across multiple films, something studios weren't fully sure about before this. Crossing $1 billion confirmed that this approach worked, and worked big. After the Avengers, everything shifted. Studios started trying to build their own cinematic universes, and Marvel doubled down on its long-term storytelling. So the movie didn't just succeed financially, it redefined what blockbuster filmmaking could look like. It showed that if you build your characters right, bringing them together can create something way bigger than the sum of its parts. The first theatrical Marvel release. The first widely recognized theatrical Marvel movie is Howard the Duck. Released in 1986 and produced by George Lucas, it was the first time a Marvel character got a full theatrical film with proper cinema release. It's a weird comedic sci-fi movie that didn't land well with critics, but historically it's important because it marked Marvel's first real attempt at breaking into Hollywood. Before that, there was Captain America, released in 1944. This wasn't a single movie like today, it was a serial, meaning it was split into multiple short episodes shown in theaters over time. While it featured Captain America, it was very different from the comics, with major changes to the character's origin and identity. The reason Howard the Duck is usually called the first is because it fits the modern definition of a theatrical film, one complete movie released in cinemas. The 1944 Captain America project, while technically shown in theaters, was more like a weekly episodic experience, closer to a TV series before TV was even common. So depending on how you define it, both answers can be correct. From low-budget, black and white serials to strange 80s experiments, it took decades to figure out how to properly bring these characters to life. Without those early attempts, even the messy ones, you probably don't get the massive cinematic universe we have today. The first animated show. It is Marvel Superheroes, released in 1966. It was an anthology series starring 5 of Marvel's biggest heroes at the time: Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Namor. A total of 65 episodes were produced, split into 13 episodes per hero, all airing between September and December of that same year. Each hero had their own segment, almost like mini-shows inside one big series. One episode might follow Captain America, the next Iron Man, then Thor, and so on. This format made it feel like Marvel was exactly experimenting with a shared universe, even in animation. It also gave audiences a chance to see multiple heroes regularly, instead of committing to just one character. The show was produced by Grant Ray, Lawrence Animation, and you can definitely tell it was made on a tight budget. The animation was extremely limited. Sometimes they literally used panels straight from the comics with slight movements added. Voice acting carried most of the experience, almost like a radio drama with visuals. It wasn't smooth or flashy, but it still worked in its own way. Even with its simple production, the Marvel Superheroes was a huge step forward. It was the first time Marvel characters were brought to life in animation, and it helped introduce them to a wider audience beyond comic readers. Plus, it gave us the iconic, slightly cheesy theme songs that fans might recognize today. It may look outdated now, but this is where Marvel animation really began. The first video game. It's Spider-Man, released in 1982 for the Atari 2600 by Parker Brothers. This was the very first time a Marvel character became playable in a video game, marking the start of Marvel's long history in gaming. It was simple, but for its time, it was a big deal, bringing superheroes from comics into an interactive format. The game puts you in control of Spider-Man, climbing a skyscraper while avoiding bombs dropped by the Green Goblin. The goal is straightforward: reach the top, defuse the bomb, and save the day. There's no deep story or complex mechanics, just timing, movement, and quick reactions. Because it was made for the Atari 2600, the visuals were extremely basic. You've got blocky graphics, simple animations, and repetitive sounds. But despite limitations, the game still managed to capture the core idea of Spider-Man: climbing walls, dodging danger, and facing off against a villain. The first black superhero. It is Black Panther, who debuted in Fantastic Four issue 52. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, T'Challa was introduced as a powerful, intelligent king and hero right from the start. What made Black Panther stand out immediately is that he wasn't portrayed as secondary or dependent on other heroes. He was the ruler of Wakanda, one of the most advanced nations in the Marvel universe. When the Fantastic Four first met him, it's actually him testing them, not the other way around. That alone made him feel different from anything audiences had seen before. At a time when representation representation in comics was extremely limited, Black Panther broke new ground. He was strong, strategic, and highly skilled, challenging stereotypes and showing a completely different image of a black superhero. His existence opened the door for more diverse characters in Marvel and across comics as a whole. Black Panther wasn't just Marvel's first black hero, he became one of its most important characters. He was living proof that heroes could come from different cultures and backgrounds while still being central to the story. Decades later, his impact is still felt, especially with how widely recognized and respected the character has become worldwide. The first crossover with DC Comics. It is Superman vs. The Amazing Spider-Man, released in 1976. Two rival companies bringing their biggest icons together in one story. Before this, the idea of characters from different publishers sharing a comic felt impossible, but this issue proved it could actually happen. The story brings together Spider-Man and Superman, who initially clashed before teaming up. On the villain side, Lex Luthor and Dr. Octopus join forces, creating a threat big enough to force the heroes to work together. It follows the classic crossover formula we still see today. Like most crossover stories, the heroes don't trust each other at first and end up fighting. But once they realize the bigger danger, they put their differences aside. Watching Spider-Man's grounded, street-level style interact with Superman's near-godlike power is part of what made this crossover so fun and memorable. This comic opened the door for more Marvel DC crossovers in the future, like Batman vs. Hulk and the Amalgam Universe. More importantly, it showed that fans didn't just accept the idea, they loved it. It turned a what-if into reality and became one of the most iconic crossover moments in comic book history.